My background was my grandfather was an engineer, and he and my father, very passionate historic car enthusiasts. So I grew up with mechanics from a very young age. And my interest came to horology through clocks, and the idea to restore and perhaps to be able to make a clock one day. And that's where the school came in London, this chance to go and learn about the science and techniques of horology, the science of time measurement. And so, you know, this was the foundation stones, you know. At that time, though, it wasn't really, you know, in the mid-80s, the Swiss watch industry was in crisis still. It was a difficult time. And in the UK, there was not much talk about this. So it was a very transitional time. But for me, you know, when you're young and you have a passion, it doesn't really matter, you know, you go forward. And I wanted to learn more. So from there, I had a chance to be able to work in Bond Street in London for Asprey, restoring and servicing watches, and just a few months later the chance to go to Wostep in Neuchâtel to build on those skills and spend 5 months there was a great opportunity. Robert's family were watchmakers and had a watch retail and repair store. But Robert decided not to follow in that area. He decided to go more into construction, conception, product for the watch. And so early in his career, he was able to work with really, unfortunately, the late Günther Blümlein in the late 80s, and so it was a fantastic experience for him to be able to work with Mr. Blümlein, Herr Blümlein, who was a visionary, you know, really a visionary through the 90s, on into the 90s, and you know, we know the story. So, and then Robert and I, well, our paths crossed in Le Locle at Renaud and Papy, and so I started there from London with my experience of antique watch restoration and complicated watch restoration. I had a good baggage to be able to assist the team that was slowly building up. It was still small then, and we were building fantastic, complicated mechanical wristwatch movements through the 90s. So very early on, Robert and myself defined centres of responsibility. So I support and active on the technical side, and also a sort of brand ambassador, if you like. And then Robert is driving and overseeing the creation, the product, the actual design, and the strategy. So that way we can work more efficiently because we can do more, because two heads are better than one. And so, as we mentioned, so we had this technical innovation, and what we realized when we were working with the Double Tourbillon 30 degrees was not only was that it wasn't just a one shot, but there was a whole new avenue, a whole new undiscovered territory which we could explore. And so, well, now it's part of history because we've seen our different tourbillon inventions. But beyond that, there was this aspect of considering not a movement, a case, a dial and hands, but to look at the whole as a creation. And so everything to be integrated together. And this is very challenging because each time you change or you need to adjust and improve perhaps the design aspect, that can impact the technical side. So we need to have a strong expertise for that to be able to push forward. As we often find in human history, is you have a rush of technology and then you have a sort of a reaction to that. And so I think the electronic watch was a very exciting evolution because it enabled the mechanical watch to be freed of that utility aspect. So the mechanical watch could take a completely different role, which is what we see today now in a fairly mature way, 25, 30 years down the road. But back at that time, of course, nobody knew where it was going to go. If you really want to end up with the result that we're looking for, so if you look, for example, at our invention piece 1, this is a piece now from 10 years ago when we introduced that invention piece 1, and it really is a piece which marks a very important turning point, because it's there that we really were able to demonstrate a mechanical architecture for the timepiece. And so it's a bold statement. It's a piece where the mechanism, the architecture and the finishing are center stage, and the timekeeping aspect is really a secondary aspect of the whole creation. So this was a very, very significant and important moment and an important message to try to get across, which is not easy because you're going against the tide of a world which wants to make more and more watches to more and more people, and a watch here and a watch there, and you know, for every different price point. And so for us, this was antinomic with our philosophy. And so we've never sought to make a large volume of pieces. What we seek to do is to do the very best we can. The Double Tourbillon 30 degrees is really a cornerstone of Greubel Forsey, but it's also, it is a cornerstone in terms of the tourbillon, because around the year 2000, you know, we were thinking in relation to the traditional single axe tourbillon, which is very beautiful and you can get a nice performance, but we were thinking, is that as far as we can go? And so it was by sitting down and looking with a fresh approach and a very different original approach that we realized that that was very interesting, but perhaps we could go further. And this is where the breakthrough came, to work with inclined escapements, particularly in the Double Tourbillon 30 degrees, first to attack a complex subject, which was to have a multi-axis inclined tourbillon. And so that was the essence, and from our experiments and calculation and everything, we were able to see that this could really deliver an improvement in performance for a mechanical wristwatch. And that was a key motivation for us as watchmakers. And so it was very early on. It was in fact in probably our second edition on Basel World, the very first conversation, because we were close to Mr. Dufour and where his booth was, and towards the end of the show we had a bit more time, so you stand outside the booth and you're talking, and yeah, it's difficult to find watchmakers, you can't find people with the skills that you can build on and so on. And it was really, you know, it was this shock realization that what we saw, that if we wanted to bring people to our team, we had to give them so much training to get them to where we needed them to be, that this gap was so huge, and we realized it's getting bigger, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and with the risk that we completely lose that traditional watchmaking know-how. So with Robert, you know, we said, well, you know, wow, this is super important, and we need to draw attention to that. And so that was the motivation to create Time Ian. It took us already from 2006 to 2008 to actually create Time Ian, 5 independent watchmakers, and we thought, yeah, okay, now now we can draw attention, we can get some interest from some support from the industry, and really do something. Thanks to the fantastic result, Christie's as an auction house approached us and offered to help us in this project, and they said, well, let's auction a piece, the school watch, the very first one. And so that went under the hammer 30th May 2016, and incredible. It fetched a record result of over 3 times what the subscription would be for one of the 11 pieces to be made in that same, the 11 watches to be made in that same technique and method. And so thanks to that, we have a small resource now. So we've also been able to, with Acon Foundation, Michel, we've been able to do already 3 workshops in 3 different continents. So in Mexico in October last year, CR, 3 Mexican watchmakers. Then we moved that to Dubai in November, to Dubai Watch Week. We were able to do also for 3 watchmakers there, an introduction to hand finishing. And this year in SIHH, also thanks to the partnership of the Fondation Horlogerie, they gave us, made available to us a dedicated space for Taimian to have its own booth for the 2nd year. And there we were able to do again a workshop with 3 watchmakers, young student watchmakers this time, to spend 5 days to learn some techniques and traditional methods. So you know, we're doing what we said we would do, and we're putting that in place, but we need help. So you know, if anybody is out there who wants to support and join the project, then of course we are always very, very pleased to talk about that.